This is the story of a man named Stanley. Stanley worked for a company in a big building where he was employee number 427. Employee number 427's job was simple. He sat at his desk in room 427 and he watched YouTube videos. And Stanley was happy. But then one day something peculiar happened. Something that would forever change Stanley. Something he would never quite forget. He began watching a YouTube video. A YouTube video that began with the phrase, "Welcome to Nitpicks and Pixels." Honestly guys, this is going to be a bit of a weirdly organized episode, because the game itself is so odd. It deconstructs and critically analyzes a lot of what I would be deconstructing and critically analyzing. So it's kind of like going another level down in Inception. No, we're not doing that. I'm going to suggest playing the game first because it's almost impossible to talk about this game without spoiling some of its major aspects. If you don't want to pay for the game, there's a beta that I've linked down in Hyrule that came out a couple of years ago, which I actually played first. It won't take longer than about 15 minutes for you to beat any of the endings, and I suggest playing it through a couple of times to see what happens. So for those that want to go into a new experience fresh, I'll give you some time to play. Good? Alright. For those that haven't played the game and don't mind the spoilers, I'll attempt to give you a brief summary. The game is framed by an ongoing narrator as the story of an office worker named Stanley, who spends his entire day pressing buttons on a keyboard. One day, the commands that tell him which buttons to press in what order stop coming in, and all of his co-workers have mysteriously disappeared. At this point, you get to control Stanley, and after a couple of rooms, this happens.
When Stanley came to a set of two open doors, he entered the door on his left.
The whole game becomes this meta-narrative based on this one decision, and in my opinion, it's one of the coolest decisions in gaming, for a couple of reasons. One of the reasons I love it is just because it's this great dilemma. I mean, I spent minutes thinking about this before I ever actually went through one of the doors. The other reason, though? We're gonna have to go down one of the paths in order to explore it more clearly. In this case, I defied the narrator, went through some hallways, and found a maintenance elevator I could go down. From there, the narrator attempts to get you back onto the main story path, only to walk you into a giant spoiler. Fearing the spoiler, the narrator restarts the game. This is actually very common, as every time you get to an ending, the game simply restarts. Keep that in mind, it'll be important later. But this time, things are a little different. When you go to the hallway of the two doors, there's many doors. And the narrator doesn't know where to go. He restarts. Then, instead of two doors, there are no doors. He restarts again. After a series of comical adventures with some of the happiest music in gaming, you reach this room, in which both you and the narrator find out that everything you have done has been pre-planned and entirely pointless. Though the narrator decides not to restart, the game restarts of its own accord, marking the end of the confusion ending. This may have seemed like a bit of a pointless and, well, confusing detour, but it highlights one of the most important aspects of the game. The game has an underlying theme about the nature of choice in all video games. Stanley spending all day pressing buttons on a keyboard, a clear nod to gamers themselves. And that choice from the beginning, no matter what you do, no matter what crazy ending you get, the game always restarts. The end is never the end, is never the end, is never the end. It very cleverly discusses the illusion of choice in video games, sometimes through subtle hints, and in some endings, directly saying it to the audience.
Maybe when you go talk about this with your friend, you'll say, "Oh, did you get the broom closet ending? The broom closet ending was my favourite." I hope your friends find this concerning.
And the game doesn't just talk about choice in video games, it talks about large-scale topics like the nature of playing as a fictional character, or smaller-scale topics like the achievement system, or gamers trying to break the game so that they can see past the boundaries.
At first, Stanley assumed he'd broken the map, until he heard this narration and realized it was part of the game's design all along.
The Stanley Parable uses gamer expectation and flips it on its head, pulling the rug out from under them. It uses these expectations and this subversion to provide a critical analysis of the medium as a whole, kind of like the community of video games. In fact, the game is so self-aware that it even includes a museum of how they made the game, from early designs to alpha builds to cut content. This all cements the fact that the game is very careful and deliberate in what it's doing. Almost every hallway, every piece of dialogue subverts some trope in video games. So, why do I love the game so much? Because it uses clever subversion to give the audience what they need to hear, rather than just another power fantasy. It simultaneously celebrates everything about the medium while pointing out its flaws and how pointless it can really be. You will never find your coworkers. The mystery will never be solved, because it's yet another subversion of the game. As much as it's a story about Stanley, it's a story about us, all gamers, and the things that we've come to expect from our entertainment. And in a world where Call of Duty clones are the norm, it's nice and refreshing to see a game that is finally willing to break all the rules we set for ourselves. But hey, that's just scratching the surface of the game. It's one of my favorites, so I'm definitely going to put a link down in Hyrule for you to check out. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next week. I've been doing that for like 15 minutes straight, so I need a break! Haha!